Welcome to Luther's world of cryptids, ghosts, and the unexplained. If you're into strange things that fly above us in the skies or creepy things that go bump in the night, then you have come to the right place. Much like cryptid creatures or folklore tales, they have a home here, and so do you in Luther's world. Episode number 1, I never thought it would happen to me. Real stories told by the people who witnessed them themselves. First up, we have a tale told by the Emperor, Baron Black. He's going to tell us about a little nighttime UFO.
It's the Emperor Baron Black. You might have seen me on AEW, professional wrestler, for 10 years. And this is my story of, what's the word? Paranormal? Abnormal? Something like that. So, to start off, I gotta give you a little backstory, okay? I gotta set y'all up real nice, you know what I mean? Set the table for you. It's me as a teenager. I was an Army brat. My stepdad was in the military, so we lived on a military base. To be exact, we lived in Fort Stewart, Georgia, which is next to Hinesville, which is very close to Savannah, Georgia. So one day, being the badass that I am, I stayed out past when the street lights go on. So, you know, everybody that grew up in a household with black families, you know you need to come in the house when the street lights come on. So being a badass, I didn't come in as high when the street lights come on. I stayed outside. It was dark. I wasn't supposed to be outside anymore. I stayed outside. So I just got done playing soccer with my homies down the street. I was walking back to my apartment and I seen this oval-shaped glowing ball in the sky. At first I shrugged it off. I was like, oh, that's just an airplane, or I thought it was probably some jet because they also had a Air Force base near Fort Stewart as well. Well, it got a little interesting because the orb started doing maneuvers that wasn't plane-like. It was like going into a U in circular motion like that. So I was like, oh, what the hell is that? You know what I mean? But I just kept walking. It was probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock. And then I just sat outside in the field just watching it, and it was just pulsating. And I was like, am I really experiencing a UFO? I really didn't think UFOs are real, but at that day, I realized they are real. And every time I tell people this story, nobody believes me, but I was like, I seen a UFO. I mean, it was very defined, oval-shaped thing, flying object, and it was not an airplane, it wasn't no jet. It was making this motion like this, and then it did a whole circular motion like that. So it was really interesting. I was like a shock thing for me because I was like, I never seen a UFO. You just see the shit on, you see the shit on movies, you see the shit on TV, and you're like, that's a bunch of horse shit. None of that shit is real. They doctored all that shit. But I've seen it for myself, and I've been a believer ever since, and I was 13-year-old at that point in time. So I was scared to go to sleep that night. If anybody remembers the movie Mars Attacks, that movie scared me to death as a child. I really thought shit like that can actually happen. So I was actually scared to go to sleep that night. And I always peeked out the window once I got home. It stayed there for at least 45 minutes. And I was wondering if I was the only person that seen this shit because it was pretty big in the sky. It was pretty big in the sky, but we're on a military base and most families, they're tucking their children in about this time, so nobody's really watching what's going on outside. I stayed there for a while and then it just shot off into the distance. This is the time I finally got inside the house and I was peeking out the window. So I slept in my bed like there was a monster under my bed. Because I didn't know if this thing was coming back, and you don't watch all the movies and the X-Files and all other shit about being abducted and all this other stuff. So I was really frightened. I don't know if I was thinking, did they see me or they're gonna come get me and all this other stuff. So I really slept with one eye open that night. I really didn't get no damn sleep. And I just never saw it again. And I went like back every other night, hoping to see it again, like a fool. Who does that, dummy? You trying to get abducted? So it's like, but it never showed up again. And I was like, damn, I experienced a UFO. And I never told anybody this story until I actually became 21. When I got 21, I started telling people, and people was like, dude, please, you're lying your ass off. But no, it's real. UFOs are real. They coming. Didn't the government just recently confirm UFOs anyway? So they're real. I don't know why the one I seen was bright orange and they did these little circular motions and stuff, but I was a believer after that. So after that, I started, looking up UFO stuff. That's kind of like a guilty pleasure of mine. I look up that stuff and watch the old footage of people, of UFO sightings and shit. And I'm just waiting, just like everybody else here on Earth, especially America, for them to finally come down and greet us. I just hope it doesn't end like Independence Day, and it's something more happy, and exciting. So that's my story. UFOs are real because I seen it. If you didn't know, you're gonna learn today.
Wow. Now, I've done a little research after Baron told me about this, and I've come across, after Googling through, you can find pictures, you can find videos of the exact same orange UFOs that he described. They're all on there, so I would totally take a look at that. Next up, we have a man who's been a friend of mine for over 30 years in the wrestling business, and he has quite a tale to tell. So, Don Callis is going to tell us all about the Calgary Ant Woman.
Hey, welcome to Luther's World. I'm Chris Jericho, and we have Don Callis here to tell the crazy story. You want paranormal stories? You want weird stories? He's got one about the Ant Woman from Calgary.
So, we've all seen these big heating grates that, like, steam comes out of from the street or whatever.
Yeah.
About 8 feet by 8 feet, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. They're in the street. So I'm walking my dog one day in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I look across the street, and I don't know why I was drawn to it, but I look over and I see one of these heating grates, a young girl, maybe 17, 19, 20, pushing up the heating grate and coming out of the hole underneath it. And I'm looking at this, something weird about it. My mind isn't quite processing it in that moment. But I see the girl does this, pushes the grate up, walks out like nothing onto the street. And she looks at me and kind of gives me a wry smile and kind of like a, you caught me. And then she skips off round the corner. She was gone. So I was curious what a girl would be doing down one of these holes, and so I thought, well, I'm gonna go check this thing out. Maybe people live there, like under the elements. So I go over and I take my flashlight on my phone and I look, and it is unbelievable because there's nothing. It's just 8 feet straight down, sheer concrete. There's nothing down there. No one's living there, and there's no ladder to get out. It's about 8 feet down. So now I start doing the math and I say, well, how did this girl just walk out of here? There's no steps, there's no ladder, nothing. So I'm thinking, wow, that's weird. Well, maybe I'm missing something because I'm looking down through the grate. I'm like, I'll just move the grate and I'll put the light down there. So I go and I kind of grab the grate like I'm going to lift it up like a deadlift, and I can't budge it. It's that heavy. It will not move. I'm 240 pounds at the time. Strong guy. I can't move it an inch. Yet this girl did this, lifted it like it was nothing, which would be impossible, and also walked normally out of this 8-foot hole. And I tell you, my blood run cold that day, because when you think about it, how did this happen? How could she have possibly overhead lifted that grate that I couldn't move? I named her the Ant Woman because ants have great power to lift much more than their actual weight. I later did further research, and I found out that in the 1920s, the city of Calgary dug tunnels to build a subway. That project, sadly, was never completed, but the tunnels remain, and so do the ant people of Calgary.
Wow, that is a tremendous story. And, whoa. And I know one thing, though. Those grates, I've tried to lift those before, and they are super heavy. Thanks, Don. Now it's time to hit up Luther's mailbag in a little segment we call The Paper Trail. It's time for the paper trail once again, and this one is from Chapel St. Leonard's Beach in Skegness, hope I got that right, England, on May 18th, 2019, and it's sent in by Fox Whitaker. So thanks for sending that in. I was walking on the beach with my parents and two dogs, and there was a guy in the distance in all orange clothing. He was standing close to the tide and facing the direction of the sea. We were walking in the direction of him, and he was still there. A couple minutes later, one of my dogs went astray. As I turned to shout at him, the guy in all orange had completely disappeared. There were only 3 ways he could have gone. 1, walking away from us, but we would have seen him. 2, in the same direction as us, as we'd have noticed him because he would have been walking right at us. 3, toward the steps and back up to the caravan site, which we would have seen him do that too, because it would have been right in front of us. It's not possible for him to just vanish so quickly, yet he vanished. Thanks, Fox.
What's up, guys? It's Austin Gunn, All Elite Superstar and MVP of the crowd, Austin Gunn, 1/3 of the Gun Club, and I'm here to read stories from Luther's World. Let's get right into it. I had 2 sons. My older one, age 8 at the time, would never sleep in the dark. I had a nightlight till I was 14, clairvoyant and all, so I always assumed he was having some of the same issues. My younger son, age 5 at the time, would only sleep with the radio on, and it was a set routine to his bedtime. He had moved into a new house, and I was putting him to bed, and he went to turn on his radio and said, No radio. When I asked why, I was told, the green ghost that lives in my room doesn't like it. Oh, okay. There's a green ghost in your room? Yes, but he's nice. The black ghost who lives upstairs is really mean, though. The boys had been playing in the large guest room upstairs and then had stopped going up there altogether. My cousin came to visit that weekend, and we put him in the guest room but didn't mention anything about spirits or ghosts, because who wants to be that person, LOL. The next morning, he came down, and I asked how he slept, and he said horrible. He said he felt like he was wrestling a demon all night, and there was something dark in that room. A few days later, I was alone in the house, and I was hanging curtains in my youngest son's room. I was ironing them in the living room and then hanging them in the bedroom. I turned on the radio in there and went to the living room to iron. When I returned, the radio was off. I thought maybe I had turned it on and made a mental note and turned it off again. Left the room and came back, and it was once again off. So this time I turned it on and put it on the Christian channel, Religious Upbringing. I left and came back, and it was off, and when I put it back on the channel, was changed to just static. We didn't stay in that house long. I don't mess with the spiritual. The end.
This is QT Marshall from AEW and the Nightmare Factory, and I'm here reading fan mail for Luther's World. This right here is the ghost of Grandpa. This is going to seem pretty tame at first, but I promise it is 100% true. In 2004, I had just come back from Iraq, and I went to visit my girlfriend's family in the West Wales, UK. We were at her grandmother's house. My girlfriend was in the kitchen with her mother and grandmother, so I was in the front room with her sister and her sister's son, who was 2.5 at the time. Really didn't know them too well, but the small talk was turning into laughter, so I seemed like it was going well. The young boy got up and went to the window and looked out and saw an elderly man walking down the driveway right up to the house. I turned to her sister and said, should we answer it? But she was seriously pale, with tears in her eyes, and she ran into the kitchen. Sam, my girlfriend, came into the room and asked, hey, did you see someone come down the driveway? I said, yeah. Someone gonna answer the door? Without missing a beat, in a pissed off tone, she pointed at the picture and said, was it him? I said, yeah, why? She said, well, that's my grandfather who's been dead for 2 years. I swear to God, I felt it like I had an electric shock. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. That was 100% him. It was at this time her grandmother said, don't worry about it. He's around here all the time. It was the scariest thing I've ever been through, and I spent 7 months of that year as an active frontline infantry soldier. Thanks for hearing me out, and good luck in AEW, mate. That's Jay Mills from Mountain Ash, South Wales.
Hi, this is the new effing show, Jerry Lynn, and you're watching Luther's World of Cryptids, Ghosts, and the Unexplained.
Hey, if you have a story of anything that has happened to you or that you've experienced and you want to write it out and email it to me, you can do so at Luthersworldmail@gmail.com. Send it on in, or even better, videotape yourself telling your own story. Now we're going to go to Lonni, and he's going to tell us a little story about the hide-and-go-seek champion of the world, Bigfoot.
This is one of my favorite stories that I heard as a kid. It comes from a 1893 memoir called The Wilderness Hunter by Theodore Roosevelt. Now, President Roosevelt was an avid outdoorsman, and he retells this story told to him by this grizzled, weather-beaten old frontiersman by the name of Bowman. Now, Bowman tells the story that when he was much younger, him and a friend were off to trap beavers. So there was this particular rugged river valley where they felt that they could go because the beavers were told to be plenty, which was an interesting choice because the year prior, a lone trapper was found in this area, mutilated and ripped in half by some unknown beast. Now, regardless of that, Bowman and his companion decide that they're going to go to this place to trap beaver. So they leave their horses at this little area, and they go up this fine mountain pass. They find a nice glade and set up camp, and then they go set their traps. Now it's getting darker as they get back to camp, but there's still a little bit of glint of sunlight in the sky. What they notice when they return to camp is very interesting. You see, the lean-to they had built is torn down and flat. The contents of all their camping gear has been strewn about the area, and they see what looks like little bear prints. Now, as the sun's going down, it takes a moment for Bowman's companion to set up a torch, a light, to see what he can see. And what he discovers is kind of interesting, because he says to Bowman, he goes, whatever it was, this bear walked out of here on 2 feet. Which leads Bowman to have one of those grizzled old big laughs that a mountain man would have, and he kind of pushes it off as something kind of ludicrous. But the two men continue with the setup of camp, and then they go to sleep. Now, interestingly enough, in the middle of the night, Bowman is woken by this stench, this fetid stench that goes into his nostrils and actually just wakes him up. Upon waking up, and his eyes start to kind of match the darkness, he sees kind of like this dark figure kind of moving. So he grabs his rifle and he shoots. And then he sees whatever big mass run into the forest. Now this is kind of unsettling, but Bowman, being a mountain man, kind of just writes it off as some odd coincidence, some animal. In the morning, they go out and check their traps. And again, when they return back to camp, they're greeted with sort of the same thing. Their lean-to has been destroyed again, and the contents of their stuff is re-thrown out all around the camp. But this time, they're able to see clearly footsteps leading away from camp, as if a footprint was like placed in snow. They can see that it's a foot. Now this is kind of unnerving as you're heading into nightfall. So they build up a little bit of a bigger fire, and then they plan to stay up more throughout the night. As they're, I guess, sitting by the fire in their lean-to, they hear different commotions surrounding them. They hear the twigs breaking, branches breaking. They hear that woeful scream and cry that is associated with Sasquatch now echo throughout. Now, this is one of those things where, it takes a lot of brave men to want to stay longer. And even though Bowman and his companion were mountain men and have seen all sorts of manner of animal, they decided the next day that they're going to hightail it out of there. The place is just a little too creepy for them. They spend the day collecting their traps, and the whole time have an uneasy feeling like they're being watched. Upon returning to camp, Bowman and his companion decide what will happen is Bowman will go get the last 3 traps that are still out set, and his companion will kind of tear down camp and pack everything up, ready for them to take the pass down and collect their horses. So Bowman's gone, but he's gone for a little longer because he's got to deal with whatever's happening with the traps, be it with there's trapped beaver in there or the like. He returns to camp, though, to find his partner still laying against a tree trunk with his neck broken and 4 fang puncture marks in his neck. Now, whatever did this bashed his companion around and leaned him up against the tree and left. I'm sure it didn't take long for Bowman to get the heck out of there. And it was only years later that he was able to tell this tale to Roosevelt. Now, they don't make any mention of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, but I listen to it and I see the similarities to a lot of the stories that people talk about in the Sasquatch world. The sounds, the smells, the ominous figure that they see, and most importantly, the footprints.
Now we're going to do something called Cryptids of the World. So today, our cryptid of the world is going to be the Ogopogo from Canada, since I'm Canadian, so we're going to start off with that. The Ogopogo is a lake monster that lives in Lake Okanagan, located in British Columbia, Canada. It's said that the Ogopogo is 40 to 50 feet long. In 1926, a sighting happened at the Okanagan Mission Beach. The event was witnessed by over 30 cars full of people, all claiming to have seen the same thing, a sea monster within the lake. The First Nations people of Canada have reportedly seen the creature since the 19th century. It's been told they would even give offerings to the creature for safe passage across the lake. In 1968, Art Folden shot a footage of the Ogopogo, which showed a large wake moving across the lake. In 2011, a cell phone video captured 2 dark shapes in the water, although some say the video is of 2 logs in the water. I'm sure you can Google that, check it out, and see for yourself on that. Many think the Ogopogo could possibly be a plesiosaurus, a mosasaurus, or a pliosaurus, and I'm sure I butchered at least 2 of those names. It is said in the middle of the lake Okanagan that there are caves down deep within it, and that could possibly be where the creature known as the Ogopogo lives. Well, I have an Ogopogo story myself. As a kid, I was out in Penticton, which is along the lake Okanagan, and I was going to hockey camp. So on one of the days we had off, I went down to the beach because I was going to search for Ogopogo. So the only thing I found was a severe sunburn that did not jive well with my hockey equipment for the rest of my time there. So it was my Ogopogo experience was very painful. So some of you like to go out and you like to do a little ghost adventuring, a little ghost hunting. Well, I'm going to try to make it a little easier. Each week I'll talk about a haunted hotel somewhere around the world or around America. So the first one here is going to take us to Savannah, Georgia, and the Marshall House. The Marshall House is located at 123 East Broughton Street, Savannah, Georgia, 31401. The cost of staying at the Marshall House is going to range you from about $140 to $170 a night. But if you look around, you can probably get some cheaper rates. So a little bit about the house. The Marshall House was first opened in 1851, and it was turned into a hospital on 3 occasions. 2 during a yellow fever epidemic, and 1 during the American Civil War. It was shut down for many years before being made into a hotel, and it is still a hotel to this day. There are many reports of soldiers still residing at the hotel. Guests have reported witnessing men in Civil War clothes wandering around the hallways. And there's, during these reports from what I was reading, it also said that there was no reenactments, there was no people there like that, but yet people still see these fully dressed Civil War soldiers just numerously walking around. One of the stories, and it's been reported numerous times, of a young soldier holding his own severed arm. He'll walk around looking for someone to help him to reattach it. And then when you go to speak to this soldier, he just disappears. People have said they've woken up in the middle of the night with their arms outstretched as if a nurse is checking for their pulse. Reports of ghostly children running around the hallways. I'm guessing that's from the yellow fever outbreak. Water taps in your rooms will just turn on and then turn off all by themselves. Doorknobs rattle as if someone's trying to get into the room. So if you're into ghostly Civil War reenactments or spirited yellow fever children, look no further than spending a night or 2 at the Marshall House in Savannah, Georgia. Hey, thanks to all my guests on today, the first episode. We're going to say thanks to Baron Black, to Don Callis, and Chris Jericho. Thanks to Austin Gunn and QT Marshall for reading some mail. Jerry Lynn for stopping by. And Lonni Olson, whoa, what a Bigfoot story. That was great. This show is helped by Derek Drexl for all the graphics and editing. Mikey Rukus, who has a new album out called Bring the Rukus. You can catch that on Spotify, and trust me, it is awesome. Nathan Mowery, he has 3 projects going on right now, and you should check those out. Macabaret, which you can check out on whitedogsaloon.com. Relentless on Amazon. And I'm Too Old for This Shit on iTunes and other media. That's a Chris Jericho joint. Thanks for watching.